You know that feeling you get when you're looking at some big, powerful, respected organization and you just think, why are they ignoring the facts? It's so frustrating, right? Well, today, we're going to dig into some research that might finally give us an answer.
I mean, it is a puzzle you see all the time. You have these institutions, right? They've got the smartest people, mountains of data, and we totally trust them. And yet, they seem to get stuck. They resist new evidence, even when it's literally staring them in the face. So what's going on here? How is that even possible? Okay, so this is where things get really counterintuitive. I mean, you'd think, right, that all that trust and legitimacy would make an organization better at learning. They've got the resources, the authority, all the credibility in the world. But it turns out the research shows the complete opposite. That high level of trust can actually create this powerful resistance to new ideas. And that is the central paradox we are going to unravel today.
So, to understand why this happens, we have to start with a pretty radical idea. For these big, trusted institutions, learning isn't just hard, it's actually dangerous. So this is what the source material we're looking at calls the legitimacy learning paradox. And the core idea is pretty wild. The very thing that makes an institution so strong, its reputation, its authority, that same thing becomes its biggest weakness when it's time to adapt. Think about it. The more people trust you, the harder it is to admit you were wrong and change your mind.
And here's a breakdown of exactly why learning becomes so threatening. Look, it's not just about the simple act of being wrong. It's about what being wrong means for the story the institution tells about itself. If some new evidence pops up that suggests, hey, maybe our past decisions weren't so great, or worse, that the whole system has a crack in it, well, all of a sudden, learning isn't about getting smarter anymore. It becomes a political fight for survival. And this leads to this really fundamental shift in what the organization is even for. See, an institution usually starts out as a learning system, right? It's trying to figure things out. But as its reputation grows, its main job kind of quietly changes. It becomes about defending that reputation. Preserving the story becomes way more important than actually updating the model of reality. So what happens then? What happens when an institution is more focused on defense than on discovery?
Well, if learning is this dangerous thing, how do these powerful organizations actually manage to suppress it? I mean, without looking like they're just burying their heads in the sand. Let's get into the anatomy of how that suppression actually works.
This quote from the source material it absolutely nails it. See, the institution goes through all the motions of learning. They commission the studies, they bring in the expert panels, they collect tons and tons of data. All this information flows in, but the power structures, the core beliefs, they don't budge, not 1 inch.
And here are some of the specific tactics they use to just neutralize that learning. First, you've got advisory containment. This one's a classic. You create some independent task force to show everyone you're taking an issue seriously, but you make sure their recommendations are just suggestions, not requirements. Then there's narrative pre-commitment. That's basically just looking for evidence that confirms what you already believe. And finally, feedback penalization. Oh, this one is the quiet killer of new ideas. Dissenters don't get fired. No. They just stop getting invited to the important meetings. They get labeled not a team player. It's super subtle, but it is incredibly effective. And all of this creates this vicious cycle. Just follow me on this. The more people trust you, the higher the stakes are if you admit a mistake. So that fear makes you suppress new info. That suppression causes your understanding of the world to drift away from what's actually happening. That drift leads to more real-world failures, which you then have to hide or spin to protect your reputation, which makes your whole position even more fragile and in need of defending. It's this downward spiral, and it's hidden right there in plain sight. Okay, so if you're feeling a little pessimistic right now, I get it. But don't worry. The cool thing is, the research doesn't just diagnose the problem. It actually offers a really powerful way out. It argues that this isn't about bad people, it's about bad design. And this right here is the absolute key to solving the whole puzzle. The problem isn't a lack of facts. It's not a lack of smart people. The problem is that the whole system is set up to make learning feel dangerous. So the solution isn't about trying to find better leaders. It's about making it safe to learn. So the big idea here is something called a protected learning architecture. And you can think of it like a sandbox for ideas. It's like a firewalled safe zone right inside the institution, a formal system where people can actually stress test the organization's beliefs, they can challenge old assumptions, they can explore new evidence, all without the fear that they're going to bring the whole house down. And this shows the difference so clearly. In a typical system, right, new evidence comes in, it directly threatens authority, and that triggers suppression. But in a protected system, that same evidence flows into the safe zone first. The internal model gets updated behind the scenes, and then the institution's public position can evolve in a controlled, stable way. So it's not about these sudden, chaotic U-turns. It's about a steady, evidence-based evolution.
Okay, so what does this safe zone actually look like in practice? What are the blueprints for building an institution that can actually learn without, collapsing on itself?
All right, let's break down some of these safeguards. Error without blame. This one is so crucial. It basically creates a formal rule. Getting a forecast wrong isn't misconduct, it's just an expected part of the process. Then you have rule-based updates. This takes the pressure off of any one leader by creating automatic triggers for a review when, say, certain data points are hit. And temporal buffering. I love this one. It's all about creating a predictable rhythm for change. So instead of panicking and reacting to every new piece of data, you have scheduled cycles for review. It just lowers the temperature and makes change feel less like a crisis and more like a planned upgrade.
Now, this is a really powerful idea. Layering authority. Basically, you separate the people whose only job is to evaluate the evidence, that's the epistemic or knowledge layer, from the people who manage all the public communication. This creates a buffer, kind of a firewall, so that a really fierce internal debate among scientists doesn't instantly turn into a PR nightmare. It lets the experts argue and get to the truth, all without destabilizing public trust.
And this really is the ultimate takeaway. The strength of an institution isn't measured by whether it's right all the time. Who is? It's measured by its built-in ability to correct itself when it's wrong. The goal isn't to be infallible. The goal is to be guaranteed updatable.
So now that we have this new framework, we can start to look at institutional failures in a completely different way, and frankly, a much more productive way.
Our first instinct is often that the fix is just more transparency and more accountability, but the research warns this can actually backfire, spectacularly. Because without that safe learning architecture we talked about, more transparency just raises the political stakes. That makes the fear of blame even worse, which just leads to even more sophisticated ways of hiding the truth. Just imagine if every single internal debate at a public health agency were live-streamed. The fear of causing a public panic would completely shut down honest conversation, not encourage it.
And this final quote really serves as a powerful warning. An institution that can't learn, it can look really stable from the outside. It seems strong. It never admits it's wrong. But that stability, it's just a brittle facade. And in the end, reality always gets the final word.
So I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you see an organization you trust making what just seems like an obvious mistake, the easy answer is to blame the people in charge, right? But what this research gives us is a much more powerful lens. Maybe the problem isn't the players. Maybe it's the game itself. Maybe the problem is just bad architecture.